Welcome to Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC podcast, the show where we explore the cool, the hot, and the everything in between of the HVACR industry. Each week, we dig into the innovations, the insights, and the inspiring stories that power our trade, from the classroom to the job site and beyond. This episode is brought to you by this week's amazing sponsors: Daikin Comfort Technology, perfecting the air since 1924; Service Logic, people first, always; Hudson Technologies, 1 pound reclaimed is 1 pound not made; iConnect Training, supporting HVAC and refrigeration instructors; as well as the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbing and Pipe Fitting Industry of the United States and Canada, built on excellence since 1889. Whether you're just getting started or you've been turning wrenches for decades like myself, there's always something new for us to learn. I'm Clifton Beck, and this is Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC podcast. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We are spending time today with William Lawhorn, economist from the United States Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. A little chilly, but we're getting through. We're getting by. Nice to be working with somebody who's here bright and early in the morning, just like me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love starting the day. It's kind of part of the routine of my whole life, and I think it really does come back from growing up in a laborer environment. My father, he retired from the labor local 204 in Terre Haute, Indiana. So he was a lifelong laborer and heavy machinery operator. So he, typically started his days at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I've, being part of the trades and being a laborer myself, I'm used to starting my days early. And, labor is kind of the topic of today. And even this podcast is proudly sponsored by the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbing and Pipe Fitting Industry of the United States and Canada, otherwise known as the UA. And so we work as an industry to understand labor and to understand supply and shortages of labor. And I can remember in my time back in the 1990s, my father, when he was looking for labor for particular projects, he could go down to the union hall and choose the laborers that he wanted on a project. And my cousins, most of my family were laborers, and I can remember them taking sometimes, a couple of years to get into an apprenticeship program. And things are different. Climate is a little bit different today in labor, and there's a lot of numbers out there. There's a lot of quotes and statistics, and a lot of them are, I believe, coming from incorrect resources. And so I thought the
Mm.
best way for us to understand that data is to go to the heart of that through the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
And
So we're grateful you're with us.
well, and that it's important for us to get our data out to people
Right.
and build bridges with the community. And we've spoke a few times a little bit before we did the podcast, and I've got over 20 years of researching construction occupations and related installation, maintenance, repair workers. So I touch base, and going back even a little bit further, like you talk about working with the family. My father was an electrician, and he spent some time doing some independent contracting. And as a 14-year-old male who's small, sometimes dad would send you up into the attic
You get
to
the attics and
do
crawl spaces.
exactly. And
Yes.
so you do the stuff, but then
Yeah.
also, spent time working on farms. I spent and when you're on the farms, you're doing all sorts of little mechanical activities and things like that. Helped set cement forms. I did like I did some geosynthetic construction
Mm,
as well. So like capping landfills,
right.
lining the ponds, and also doing the lining and base stuff on landfills. So you just got to see a few different aspects that are out there in the construction field. And when it comes to data, you know one of the things we talk about BLS and Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, sorry,
Mhm.
acronym.
Absolutely.
This is the federal government, DC. We do lots of acronyms.
Oh, yeah.
Um, BLS strives and is recognized for being the gold standard when it comes to data. The office I'm in is the Office of Employment and Unemployment Statistics, and I'm actually in the employment projections group. And we, as one of our outputs for our data, we do projections out 10 years. And one
Wow.
of our other major outputs is the Occupational Outlook Handbook, which is a career guidance tool that's been known and done since the 40s.
Yep.
And that it's an important resource for individuals, counselors, businesses when they're kind of looking for some base information, and people trying to make career choices. So this is important information. That's it's one of our top outputs. It's actually, although you hear things about the employment situation on the first Friday of the month,
Hmm.
um, that's a one of the principal federal economic indicators. But when it comes down to it, the BLS website, the Occupational Outlook Handbook, gets the most website visits month in, month out,
Oh, wow. That's
because
great to
people are
know.
there for career guidance, and
Yeah.
we're aggregating some of the data. One of our sister programs, the Occupational Employment and Wages program, they're right there, but we publish their data in the handbook. So, like, when you're looking to find out what the median wages are for
Yeah.
individuals, or you're looking to find out how many people are employed um, nationwide, state, metropolitan statistical area, MSA, all those breakouts are there. For the employment projections, we're looking at the national level.
Okay.
We're
Sure.
there, but we do work with a consortium of the states, and they have Projections Central, which is the state stuff. Because of BLS data being an input, they lag a little bit. So, like, we have our 24 to 34 projections available right now. The projections that are on the state sites are the 22 to 32 projections.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and because the lag time, and let's
You
face it,
bet.
the economists, and they're amazing people at the states that are doing this work. They're stretched,
Yeah.
and it's not anything that's happening. It's just that's how it is. They're sometimes you're out in Wyoming, it's a one person shop,
Right.
and they're doing all the different BLS activities. So, like, there's only so much you can do.
Exactly. And a federal agency which, may not have grown with the amount of manpower needed for the growth of the industry around them. So I understand that. We witness that all the time. There's an explosion in labor. And so I imagine all of our state economists, as well as at the BLS, are working overtime because numbers are changing.
Well, and the other aspect is, though, is that the nature of the work is changing too.
Sure.
Work doesn't stay the same. There's some core principles that stay the same over time, but it changes.
Hmm.
We have improved technology. You know, Before I came in to federal government, it wasn't that long ago that there was literally a typist for every economist,
Oh,
or for
true.
every two economists.
Right.
Well, now we don't have them. So,
Right.
like, your staffing's reduced, but you're still maintaining the output. And
Exactly.
I think the same thing happens, when you get into trades.
It
When you're
does.
talking HVAC, you know, technology allows individuals to do so much more. It improves their testing. It improves their ability to schedule things. It improves their billing process. So all these little things play together, and they come together and make us much more efficient.
Yeah.
And it's you can still charge your rates and stuff like that, but you're able to do more. Instead of doing two jobs, you're able to do three jobs or four jobs, depending on the complexity or what the issue is. And of
Completely
course,
agree.
we do the same thing. We find ways to become more efficient. Build your economies of scale to understand things, but we're also adding. That's it's We're not staying the same. We've got things like we've added recently fields of degree
Mm,
material for people, as well as, like, some of the top skills that are available. What's required, or what are they looking for.
you bet.
And that's, you go through that, and it's one of those fun things. And like, little fact, um the for HVAC workers, looking at our skills data, um detail oriented, problem solving, and decision making, and then adaptability are the top three skills for HVAC.
That's really cool to think about. Like, what are those character traits? We talk about them all the time, but now we actually have analytical data proving that these are the components.
Exactly. And there's
Hmm.
lots of information we gather, because, like, and there's scoring, and we're still learning. That we're taking in data, and we're still learning about it,
Right.
but we're creating more things to learn. Because let's face it, we also know that there's no way you can do your job or our people can do their job without some interpersonal skills.
Exactly.
Because you're going in, you're trying to,
Dealing with customers and
you're talking to the customers because you're diagnosing. You need to pin in on what's the problem.
yeah.
And it's you go into the mechanic, for the car, and you're trying to explain what's going on, and then they've got to parse your crazy language to try to do it. And it's you have to be descriptive in a way that helps guide them to what the issue is. And some people are better at it than others. And and so you try to right fit people.
Yeah.
And so those are things that are going on. That's always there. We have things. Going back, one of the things that people giving feedback on the occupational outlook handbook. We had multiple times we've gone through and we sent out surveys to our users to get information, and this is going back 2 decades,
Mhm.
and we were still a fully print publication at the time with a little online presence. And they're going through and they're asking, they're like, "Oh, what's the important thing?" And I'm like, wages are number one. "Oh no, that doesn't matter." I'm like, no, wages.
Mhm.
They go through the survey. What do they find out? What's the top thing people look for right away? Wages. Can I make a good living at this? And
Exactly.
that's the concern. And if you can't, it takes a whole heck of a lot more passion to want to do something, or passion, and typically passion will drive your
Typically,
career.
yeah, you bet.
And so like that passion payoff quotient of like, oh, I this much passion, so I'm willing to do it. And because it's teachers is a prime example of passion and pay don't always they kind of
Align.
have that align, and sometimes there's a mismatch, and we're always trying to make sure people understand there's a good opportunity here.
Yeah. Well, as a
And
counselor, as an employer, if
there's
I am a counselor and I'm working with my students trying to find a career and I know what their character traits are, I can help fine tune into those potential careers. Or even as an employer, maybe I have hired someone and I'm finding that maybe they really don't fit in this particular role. And then I start looking and I ask some questions and I find out what their actual personal character traits are and what their passions are, and realize that, oh, this person is not great for this role, but I have a perfect role inside in customer service or in sales, some
absolutely.
other place, and I can retain that labor and I can keep that employee that I've invested into.
And also the information they've gained while doing this one thing may help make them better at this new role.
You bet.
Because it's like in many cases when you actually do something, you understand it much better than if you've just read or watched it.
I agree.
It's that, yeah, that physical act of doing plays a big role. But anyhow, we should probably get back to some of the data
No, I
discussion.
could go down this rabbit hole all day because data and analytics are the driving force behind ESCO. In all of our training and certifications, we take pride in doing the analytics to understand the outcomes. It helps guide people. It's not about what do you know or what can you do. It's, what things are you passionate about? What things do you need some assistance? What kind of roles can we put you in that fit you well? And when we look at the industry as a whole, those analytics are crucial. And one analytic that I have heard the question thousands of times and never actually known a reference point. When we talk about the HVACR industry, when we look at the size of the industry, there are so many different numbers out there. I don't even personally know myself. How large is the HVACR industry, the workforce?
So the workforce is relatively easy. And of course, when I was prepping, I looked at the occupational side less than the industry. But we do
Yeah.
have both. We have the information for both.
Oh,
So
cool.
right now, in 2024, we estimate there's about 425,000
Okay.
technicians.
That's a great number to know.
And since we're the employment projections, we're projecting to add about 34,500 new technicians between 24 and 34.
Okay.
So, and that's 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 8%,
8%.
8.1% growth,
Yep.
which is much faster than average for all
Wow.
occupations.
Yeah.
The total right now is about 3.1% for all occupations.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and you have to understand that, like, so 425,000 is not a small occupation.
Right.
So
Exactly.
moving growing a little over 8% is pretty reasonable. It's a good solid sign, but there's a lot of factors driving into why we're projecting that growth. Um, Now, like, when you look at similar occupations, they're going to be in the installation, maintenance, and repair occupations group,
Yeah.
and those right now are projected to grow about 4.6%.
Okay.
So they're a little they're
Little above
slower.
average.
They're a little above average, but slower than HVAC. So, but there's a lot of occupations that are in there, and there's some growing faster. Like, um, the wind turbine technicians is another installation, maintenance, and repair person. They're one of the fastest growing occupations
I can see that.
overall. Um, the solar photovoltaic installers, who are they're an installation one, but they're slipped into the construction
I see.
occupations. They're also in that growing much faster, much faster, and they're the top two occupations for growth. But they're tiny occupations.
You bet.
They're their total is
Total number.
the total growth between the two is only like 10,000
Oh, I see. Sure.
versus 34,000
Yeah.
for HVAC. So, and if you just give me a moment here, I have to pull some stuff up here, because when I grab things, I grab all the occupation stuff. So
Yeah.
we have in our matrix, so we have, like, all the occupations are in one place, and then all the industries they're employed in. But we also have like an industry matrix where you can look at the individual industry,
Oh,
and then that can tell you all the employment by
breakdown.
occupation
Yeah.
in that. So now I'm like, okay, let's do some things. So
Look at both angles here. Sure.
right, and it's one of those things that they're going through in this bls.gov/EMP is our main and projections website. And so what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm pulling and I'm going to the EP data area of that, into the EP data tables section. And then we have a whole bunch of tables, and I'm bringing up.
And this is all public information.
Oh yeah, this is all public. We provide that information. You can, when you click on the different tables you find, you can get them as HTMs, or you can bring them down as an XLSX file. So do a little more data manipulation. Okay, and I want the industry.
Very important for our educators. A majority of our audience, about 60% of our audience, are HVACR educators across the country and across the world. We're now at about 117 countries that listen to this show. We have a lot of educators that are trying to understand how to communicate with their administration. And this is the data that you can utilize, especially when we're talking with school counselors.
Yeah.
Why would we want to choose an HVAC program? Here's why, and here's the data to prove it.
The
So we encourage
outputs.
everyone to
Um,
dive into that data.
Okay. So one of the tables that's useful, there's two tables that are really kind of cool. There's table 1.8, which is industry occupation matrix data by occupation. So that one, you can
Mhm.
look up the occupation and find all the industries that employ this occupation.
Ah,
And then there's table 1.9, which is industry occupation data by industry. So like in this case, it's especially trade contractors, and the one that is going to be the big one here is it's 238220 is the
the code.
NAICS code
Mhm.
for it, and it's plumbing, heating, and air conditioning contractors.
Mhm.
So as you can imagine, you're going to have plumbers in there, you're going to have HVAC people in there. So there's a lot of kind of things, but they do work together, and
They're all contractors. You bet.
they've all been there.
Mechanical contractors.
So then what happens is, so I'm the and this is very specific. So this is going to be only the HVAC workers, or heating, air conditioning, refrigeration mechanics. It's only going to be those employed, not the self-employed ones, only those employed in
And those
in
contractors.
that one. And then so I'm scrolling down here to it's the standard occupational classification code for HVAC is 49-9021. And we'll find that there are 296,300 mechanics
Mechanics in that field.
in that specific industry.
Yeah.
And then, okay, the fun thing here is I'm looking at this and it doesn't the on the HTM it doesn't lock the top row.
Oh, you got to scroll back and forth.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, which column am I
Wait
looking
a minute. Where did I start here?
Yeah. Okay, so employment percent change 2434 is that column. Okay. And so specifically in that group, HVAC is projected to grow 10%.
Whoa.
10.2% actually.
Really?
Yeah. So now let's take a look to see,
3.5 times the national average.
Yeah. And as compared to plumbers, pipe fitters, steam fitters, you would think that would be a thing. Plumbers are projected to grow 4.9%. Now, mind you, plumbers are 332,000 or almost 333,000.
Sure.
So like they have a much bigger base.
Yeah.
So they're still doing quite well.
Yeah, a lot of numbers, maybe not the percentage, still a lot of growth, but percentage wise,
it's not as fast.
Because
it's starting a large base. And when you have, if you have a base of 10 employees, it's really easy to grow 50%. If you have 100 employees,
right,
because that's 50 versus 5.
Exactly.
And just to give a little perspective on how that goes. So that's just some information that's out there. And so you can dive in deep on this stuff. And we're, one of the things that has always been a pride of BLS and it across programs is when people contact us, it's the economists and the line workers who are responding to most of the things. Now, if we get a inquiry from Congress or the Wall Street Journal or something, it may run up the ladder for a little more review and stuff like that, or it may the response may come from the press office, because that's the official things. But we're in general, if one of your schools contacts us, they're gonna be talking to staff right here on the ground on the floor. So you get that real direct, and people really respect the fact that BLS is open to that,
conversation.
Yeah.
That is amazing, because when we look at our schools, we have a lot of program advisors that are going to be on the show. We're going to have a variety of levels of management that are looking at how to prepare for the future of their program. We have a lot of administrators that are contacting HVAC Excellence asking, well, how do I prepare my program, not just for the equipment, but for the growth? What is the anticipated growth of my program? Where do I find this information? This is where you find the information.
So I'm seeing right now, one of the things we really should talk about a little bit more is there's Projections Central.
Okay.
That is, you can find links because that's the state consortium, because they're the ones who do projections at the state level and the MSA area, the metropolitan statistical areas. So your schools may want to focus more on an MSA or the state because of where they're at.
It's localized.
So that's when, one of the things and what you're doing there is you're really, the information, they're aggregating information that are in the state offices of labor market information or the state department of labor, because there's all sorts of different names that they can have for the groups that are doing these statistics. But that's one of those things where I think it's really good to know that, because then we can talk about also the we're obviously jumping around a little bit some things that we had planned on a little bit, but I think this is a natural flow. So this kind of takes us to the sister program, the Occupational Employment and Wage Statistics Program, OEWS. And they have all the wage, but they also do counts of the actual employment, wage and salary. So that takes out the self-employed.
Really?
So it's only wage and salary that they do, but they have all this information. So you can find out that heating, air conditioning, refrigeration, mechanics, installers, the annual median wage is highest in the state of Alaska at
Really?
$83,660 a year, the median. And now we're
I've heard
talking
that before, but there's the proof for it.
the median, remember, is the exact midpoint.
Yeah.
So the median is typically going to be a little lower than the mean. The mean is the average. So if you
Yeah.
take all the
All of
wages
them together.
and then combine it and divide it, you get the mean. The median is really just what's the exact midpoint. And we typically go with median because it doesn't get skewed, because when you start talking averages, somebody who's been a mechanic for 30 years, they're going to make a whole heck of a lot more money than somebody who's just starting.
Entry. Yeah.
So you've got that floating thing. So it was one of those things. And I was like, oh, I guess it makes some sense, because there's some Alaska has some pretty unique needs for managing temperature and air quality.
Yeah.
So and then
very skilled labor.
And then when you start looking down the list, you've got like District of Columbia, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Minnesota. These, and the wages, they go down. The median goes down a little, but they're still doing quite well. And those are typically some higher wage areas, so it makes sense. But then like the other aspect of things that you want to look at is, okay, if you're in a specific area, a smaller statistical area, or what city, where you're making the most. So as we talked about, the highest median is in Alaska. So it's not really a surprise that the top 2 annual median wages are 2 locations in Alaska.
Exactly.
Anchorage, Alaska is number 1 at $96,610 a year for a median. Fairbanks, Alaska, Fairbanks College, I'm not sure exactly where college is, but Fairbanks I've heard of, $84,230. Now, then you get into like San Jose, Longview, Santa Cruz, Boston,
right?
Those things. But they also have
higher cost of living areas.
Yeah, but it goes through. So those are kind of some interesting little tidbits of wages, because we know wages matter for people. But then, where are the opportunities? That's one of the things we've talked about. Those things. Well, we know if you have more employment, there's going to be more opportunities. So the state of Florida has, and this is wage and salary, of course, 38,290 HVAC mechanics.
Okay.
And that's the top employing state. California has 34,000, a little over 34,000. Texas 32, New York 22,000, Pennsylvania just under 17,000. And this is stuff that's coming from that Projection Central. This part is coming from Projection Central that we talked about.
Sure.
So then you're thinking a little bit like, okay, well, where's the fastest growth?
Yeah.
Well, let's remember, once again, fast growth can be a little misleading. The state with the fastest growth, the 3 states with the fastest growth: Utah, Idaho, Wyoming. Think of their employment base. The
data center?
Well, what's going on is they're relatively small.
So
you've got just over 1,000 HVAC workers in Wyoming.
Yeah. We're not talking about 38,000. We're talking about 1,000.
Right. In Utah, like they're adding like 2,400 jobs.
Okay.
Which is pretty reasonable.
Pretty significant.
But then like when you look at Florida, which has the largest growth, they're adding 6,200 jobs. Texas adding 5,600 jobs, 5,700 jobs. California 4,300 jobs. So like
proportionately,
like even the California is almost twice what Utah is adding, even though it's only 11% growth.
Sure.
So it's one of those little things like, so it can be a little misleading when you start looking at that.
You have to look at both areas.
Right. So then we also like going back up a couple levels. We can't ignore, there's an important aspect that we haven't talked about yet. We're saying like they're going to add just over 6,000 jobs in Florida. But there's going to be a lot more jobs than 6,000 during the course of that decade.
Oh, absolutely.
because you have people retiring,
Great
moving,
point.
people moving into other occupations, which
Yeah.
may just be because of how we classify things. They may be going from a mechanic to a first line supervisor, or they may be
Okay.
becoming an owner. So then they've shifted out of being a mechanic, even though they're still in the industry.
You bet.
So, those kind of things. And this is kind of breaking things out. So we're going to talk about on average per year.
Okay.
This is not the 10-year total. This is on the given a year. Now, it's obviously not going to be exactly this number, but over the course of the decade, it's going to kind of average out to get there. We have what's called occupational separations and openings data, which is table 1.10 in our side. And we have people who are annually exiting the occupation for HVAC is about 2,900 people are exiting
On average per year.
on average per year. And then you have exits is 12,900 is what we're saying. So almost 13,000 people are exiting that occupation
Annually.
each year,
Wow.
which annually. So, and then there's people who are transferring to other
Sure.
occupations and things like that. That's another like 24,000. So, the total occupational separations are really almost 37,000 a year
I've heard numbers very
across
similar
the
to
nation.
that, because even the UA is saying that they're looking for about 30,000 employees, and they're one of the largest providers of, especially the commercial technicians in our industry. That's a lot of technicians that are leaving every year that we have to supply.
And then when you go through, so like, then when you you also factor in the growth, we're saying that, and this is not exact, about 40,000 technicians need to be hired per year. So then you add that up, and it's like that's a pretty over the course of 10 years, that's a lot of people cycling in and out. And we know that, like, you guys know as well as I do that, like, there's people who are come in training and they start off and they find out it's not for them. And so it's one, like many things, those first 3-4 years are
Yeah,
critical.
absolutely.
And once they make it past
Yeah,
5
typically
years,
it's what we
6
look
years,
at.
they're likely to be there for a
Yes.
career, really long term, a real long term point. So, that's just kind of one of those little data points to keep thinking, is that,
A
so there's
lot.
training that needs to happen. And of course, we know the training programs are always changing and adding things because the systems are updating. We're not, the what was heating and cooling 50 years ago is not the same
No,
today.
that's the thing that we struggle with the most,
So,
is staying up to date with the changes in technologies, regulations, refrigerants. There's a lot to re-educate on. One of the things that you had mentioned in that is that, that annual, and you're projecting out, many years. We always wonder here in the industry, what's the retirement looking like for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, because we do feel like there's going to be a generational gap. Do we see any of that data starting to present itself?
well, oddly enough, we have
I
data for
bet
that.
you do. That's what's curious.
So, and it's not, it's obviously not
Sure.
perfect, because we're doing this, and this information is coming mainly from the current population
Yep.
survey. So they're linked with
Yep.
census, and they're the ones who are involved with the unemployment rate, but they also do characteristics of the employed and characteristics of the unemployed. And so they actually do have they have a household data annual average table 11B.
Okay.
That's important because it's detailed. It's the current population survey has data on age group of employed persons by detailed occupation
Ooh.
and age. And this is the 24 stuff. So and they also have things on that also relate to ethnicity, gender, and things like that. But what you find is they also have a median age listed. Median age in 2024 for HVAC technicians, 38.5.
Huh.
For all occupations 16 years and up, it's 42.2.
Really?
So actually maybe a little
Wow.
better than some other. Now, of course, that's median. That's the
Yeah,
exact
yeah.
midpoint for they're
The
dropping there, but
reference.
that gives you a little something. And what I'm kind of looking at here is I have, and anybody can do that, and they can go to this table 11B, and they can find the line items, and they compare different occupations, and you can kind of look. So like one of the things you find that you wouldn't be surprised about is that like in the 16 to 19 year grouping, 2.6% are HVAC technicians. Early on, students, so it's one of those things that
Still
probably
learning.
becoming a
Yeah.
technician that young
Yeah.
is hard. So whereas overall it's about 3.5%. So there takes a little while to
You
ramp
bet.
up and get into it. Not really a surprise there. And then I think the area where maybe there might be a little where it kind of really stands out that it's very different from overall occupations is in the 25 to 34 year
Yeah.
old group. There's about 30% of HVAC technicians fall into that. So a third of your workforce is right there.
Wow.
But that probably shows that you've been doing a good job of training,
That's
bringing
what I'm
people in.
seeing. Absolutely. We are seeing that growth.
In comparison, for all occupations, 22% are 25 to 34.
Oh my goodness.
That's one of those areas where it's like,
That's big. That's very interesting.
But I think it shows how well your groups are doing
to prepare for it
and getting forward. And also that could be part of the thing that's driving that median
Yeah.
age down a little bit, is that you've done that. But then, and what won't surprise, I think, anybody here is that when you get to the older age cohorts, that 55 to 64, 65 and older, there's many fewer. There's the percent, the share is lower. Quite, and I mean, but we're talking, it's, when you're 65 years and older, 7% total for all occupations. It's about 7%. It's like 3.6% for HVAC.
That's an interesting one. I would have expected that to be higher. So that's really intriguing.
But part of it is, of the total percentage of workforce, 100%, about 3.5%, a little over 3.5% are in the older. And then it's like, 55 to 64, it's really 11% are HVAC and 16%. So it's
the proportions are off a little, but still, when you look at on an average, because I would have anticipated that we had a larger number in that range, those pre-retirement range. That's the number that we always are concerned with. But in reality, we've got a pretty significant amount of young technicians coming into the industry that do have that opportunity to fill that void.
So but that's, shows how much effort you put into preparing. So, and, mind you, this is, one snapshot in some respects, but like it shows that it shows that the positive things that are going
it shows what I feel in our industry, because we have a lot of individuals in our industry that have been very concerned about the growth, feeling like that we are not growing fast enough. But we're actually starting to see that the efforts that we have put into it are actually making significant difference. It's very encouraging, shows so much opportunity, and the data that is there to prove that.
And remember, of course, that we're talking shares, shares of, of the, 400,000 or 300, our total, that, X percent of them that's there. So it's, we're not talking like levels of employment here. So those actual levels can be kind of significant too, because it's one of those things that, you go back through and you look at, the employment of HVAC is pretty reasonable, but then you have groups like the electricians, plumbers, well, I mean, not plumbers as much, but like electricians, laborers, right around that million mark. So that's, that's a, hard for them to grow, but the, perspective wise, there's still a lot. But then you look at, some of the other, technical occupations, you look at boilermakers, it's a much, they're less than 100,000. So it's really, you're kind of in that, I
It
won't say it's a
is.
sweet spot, but
It kind of is.
you're in that spot where you're like, you can still grow pretty rapidly or show
Yeah.
rapid growth and still have significant numbers. So, but it's harder to grow really fast. And but we
Yeah, it
pretty
looks like we're on a
solid,
good
like,
path anyhow.
well, yeah, and like the other thing is that over time, things. One of the reasons that we do long-term projections at BLS is because it typically smooths out those
Right.
interrupters. So, like, we're not projecting a recession in 10 years, or we're not projecting those things. We'd have to deal with things. So, like, if we have, you go back to Great Recession and like the kind of slowdown that happened for most of construction, after that, you had
Very fast
pretty
changes.
fast growth
Sure.
coming out of that, because you're
You
starting from
dropped
the nadir,
fast, you
you're
grew
starting from the
fast.
bottom, you're down there. So you've got to, even just getting back to where you were,
It's rapid.
there's a lot going on there. So you look at that, and like, obviously construction lagged. Now HVAC didn't follow that same path because construction is about new build
You
in
bet.
most cases, and a little remodel. HVAC is new build,
A lot
but
of
it's
existing.
also, there's a lot of maintenance, there's a lot of replacement activity. In some respects, you're like roofers that way.
Exactly.
That, like, there's a
Yeah.
lifespan, and your HVAC system is only going to
Yeah.
last so long.
It's
And
perpetual
sometimes it's longer, sometimes not.
replacement.
Yeah, so there's going on, and then there's been lots of bonus programs and credits been given for improving the efficiency
yeah.
of systems. So that's work, and and people look at it, and I think the prevalence of like maintenance contracts have
Mhm.
improved, and especially as people recognize the value and
Mhm.
comfort of a
Well-tuned system. You
balanced
bet.
home. Like a few years ago, my wife and I were traveling, and we were in Memphis, and we stopped at the Sun Records tour. And one of the stories we got was that where they have like their little shop where they start you off on that, it was a cafe when Sam was recording next door. It was the first business in Memphis to have air conditioning.
Really?
And guess where Sam did a lot of business?
Yeah.
In that cafe, because
The
he
comfort.
recognized the value of working in a hot Memphis sticky air summer, of working there doing deals and things like that. And it was one of those little things that you think about. It's like, like even in this area, DC, I mean, there's a reason there's an August recess.
So true.
Even though the HVAC has come a long way and improved, it was one of those things that was built in that get away from DC during the summer because it's just too hot to be there. It's too hot and sticky. But like we now, obviously we're in the office here, and we've got limited temperature range that are allowed to follow, and it obviously individual tastes are very different. And the fight between the kids and mom and dad about what's the right temperature for the house, and put a sweater on. Why are you still wearing a sweater? It's the summer. You don't need a sweatshirt. It's the summer. You have those fights, but like it's one of those things where just recognizing. I think as a nation and as a world, we've come to appreciate not just like the temperature control, but some of the systems have been put in place to take stuff out of the air. So some of the micro irritants and stuff like that, taking them out of the air, it makes your life more comfortable, and improves things. So, getting that properly balanced system is really important, and it takes a professional to get that done.
So do you track on that conversation, do you track those types of drivers, those things like air quality, decarbonization? Are those things that are interpreted in the data as well?
They're factors. We always talk about the factors driving demand, or the factors driving change. In our system, we have base employment, and then we have a base staffing pattern, and then we determine, there's a model that helps create and drive, the employment levels out in
Mm-hmm.
2034. Well, then we apply those staffing patterns to industry material in 2034. Well, we make adjustments to those staffing patterns in the future, which can then affect the employment levels. And what helps us drive those are we have 5 factors, potential factors. Demand. Is there an overall greater demand for a specific product
Sure.
or service? Have technology plays a role in a couple places where is some sort of technology or equipment replacing individuals.
Mm-hmm.
We have, so that's the capital labor substitution. We have sourcing. So that's where like in HVAC, so we talked about the different industries they're employed in. So like there may be a bunch of people employed in the plumbing, heating, cooling industry. Well, maybe there's a shift and they need more non-residential buildings. So they're actually being employed directly by the non-residential builders.
I see.
So like there's something that's going on that's causing them to shift there.
You bet. Change
Or
in
they're shifting.
design, codes, equipment, technology.
Or it could be that, like they just want to contract the main contractors just want to contract their plumbing services, their
Right.
heating, cooling services from somebody else. So they're going to a specialty trade contractor to get that. So maybe then we're going to grow those specialty trade contractors a little faster.
I see.
Than that. And then you have so that's the sourcing change. We have productivity enhancement. So that's so we're not completely replacing people with technology, but technologies our cell phone.
Yeah, exactly.
Your cell phone, you're able to do so much more on your cell phone or your tablet, and that's saving you time on timesheets. It's saving you scheduling time and things like that. So it's allowing you to do more work with the same or fewer people. So those are things, and of course, there's always that one factor that escapes your mind, and I'm just doing a quick. Okay, and then capital labor, occupational. Oh, yeah, and then the last one is occupational substitution. So, there was one task on the job, and you know what? A laborer can do that work. They'll do it fine. So instead of having an HVAC worker do that specific task, they'll bring in
general laborer.
A laborer.
Yeah.
Especially like in, maybe not in our case, but like in some things, like, with all the prefab movements going on in construction, that work's happening off-site. So a sourcing change, they're doing it in a manufacturing site to build it, and then they're installing it on site. And so instead of concrete mason doing maybe that, it's coming in, or a carpenter, it's coming in. There's one carpenter, a laborer or something that are putting these wall sets up.
Prefab sets, yeah, you bet.
Exactly. So like
Makes
that's
sense.
so you have multiple factors playing a role in some cases, and so we're doing those. So there's things like is there demand? Well, we have things coming through like the data centers that are being built.
Yeah, huge.
One of the top things they have when they're building data centers is the cooling aspects, climate control for that particular thing. A lot of it's cooling. So, but so you have the installation aspect that so when they're on the job site, as soon as they're erecting the building, you've got your HVAC people in there. They're setting up the servers. They're balancing. You've got a balancing the cooling stuff. So you've got somebody who's in there checking that. Well, then you've got all this very expensive equipment that's operating. You've got a maintenance contract going on to make sure that you're following things to make sure the system stays running.
You bet.
But if something goes wrong, you've also got to be ready for somebody to come in and get it going right away to protect it. So that's one of the things that's in the coming decade. That's one of the things that go on. But also then you have allergies and things like that, and we talked about that, the comfort aspect. So a good HVAC system will improve the air quality in homes and businesses. So, doing that and improving that, and also like cost efficiency. So you've got better systems, or the switch. You had, fuel oil used to be like one of the number one heating sources, and now there's a lot more electricity and a lot more propane that's going on, natural gas. So you have these different, these different things that are maybe little more efficient, a little more cost steady, so people make that switch. It's like, oh, we need to change. And those are factors that we do, so there's demand for services, that is, typically, but then, like, is that demand going to affect HVAC workers more than other people within the industry too? So it's not just, you're not just comparing, them to themselves, you're comparing to other occupations. So, like, it may be that depending on the time of the cycle, you need more cost estimators going out and doing things to bid jobs because there's fewer jobs that are coming out. So you're sending more people out to do that, to try and maintain your work levels.
Right.
Or, we used to have 2 or 3 people who were taking calls in and things like that. Now it's because of some assistive technologies,
Automations, and
they're
AI
able
generative.
to auto schedule some things like that, and there's one person able to handle the work of 3 or 4 people. So
Sure.
those things all play a little role. So, like, you can have growth and share. We haven't added any, but because of technology, we don't need as much administrative staff. So the share of HVAC workers is growing in industry because
The
there's
proportion of it.
fewer proportional there. So, like, you have
Yeah.
all, and it's a very dynamic situation in that case. But yeah,
Well,
so, like, it is taking a thing, and like, comfort, and shifts in population play a role in that too. Is that, as people, there's been data that show that people have typically been moving more south. And so when you're in, there's Florida, I
Right.
believe, is one of the faster growing, and Florida has a very solid HVAC market because people want to be comfortable.
You bet.
And so, obviously the focus there is typically on cooling, but there's still some heating needs as well,
Mm-hmm.
because it does get to freezing in Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we start focusing on some of these technologies and these shifts that are also calculated into that, what about, like, education and training and, like, some of the pathways? So are you also comparing, like, education across different different fields of work?
I mean, we in our data, we do have information on, and we typically focus on the most typical path to entry,
Okay.
recognizing that there's multiple paths to entry in many cases. That there's there's apprenticeship programs,
Mm-hmm.
you've got technical programs, and you've got the family business type model where it's on the job training. It's not a formal apprenticeship, but you're learning directly from somebody who's
Sure.
doing it. So you've got these multiple paths, and like, sometimes it starts in high school, most times it's you're doing community college stuff. And then, of course, you also have, in addition to that, you also have the industry manufacturer specific training,
Yes.
especially in HVAC. It's you know the systems.
Yep.
Um,
It's becoming more
and,
prevalent.
and we don't spend a lot of time going into the nitty gritty on
Mm-hmm.
that, because only so many bodies and so much demand for our
You
time.
bet.
So we obviously rely a little bit on responses from others to help guide us on that. But typically, we do track a little bit of what it takes, and we also how much on the job training is expected. And that's always, we've refined that a little bit, because we may have had, at one point when we were first starting, we may have had too many categories
Mm-hmm.
on the job training.
Makes
And
sense.
it's like,
Focus on the ones that are really being monitored.
and also, like, for somebody coming in, how much difference is 3 years versus 5 years,
Exactly.
and stuff like that. Obviously less than a year or a month or something, that's much more okay. That's much more focused and clear. And so, like, we go through, and there's various things, and there's also never to be discounted is, like, depending on what you want to do, if you want to operate your own business, some courses can be really important in business management type things. But we also know that not everybody wants to do it. You've got Jane Smith family has operated a HVAC company for a while. She's taking over. So she's, wants to do some accounting courses as well. Maybe she does do some of the training and to understand the HVAC systems and stuff like that. But her focus is on the management. But then you also have, the brother who's just wants to go to work, put in his time, enjoy the challenges of the different systems that you're in, the problems you're solving that's going on, clocks out at the end of the day, or goes on to some sort of on-call system, and is happy. Because the great thing about many occupations, especially when you're in like the installation, maintenance, and repair, is there's all these different levels of what you want to do and all these possibilities that you don't have in some areas. In many occupations, there's a lot more opportunity to expand and control your own life and job future.
Taking that into perspective, and like in comparison to, say, a 4-year degree required position, many of these roles we're talking about do not require 4-year degrees. They may require apprenticeships, they may require certifications, associate degrees. Do we know, as overall, what percentage of jobs across the U.S. require a 4-year degree in comparison to these non-traditional 4-year degree jobs?
And we do, and that's we do track that as well.
Okay.
We have. I'm just okay. So looking through, and this is the education tables from the employment projections are the 5 series. So 5.2 table is the one that it gives the breakout of what percent is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different education classifications, from no formal educational credential to doctoral professional. So what I think is going to surprise people is really when you start looking at typical educational requirements, the requirements are much lower than most people would expect. So if you look at bachelor's degrees, that's about a quarter of jobs are require a bachelor's degree. If you add in doctoral professional degrees, which is like your doctors and lawyers, master's degrees, that's another 5%. 30% of jobs require a bachelor's or higher.
70% do not?
That is correct. So now we get right. So like, and some of the things you think are higher, like, so like when you look at associate's degree, post-secondary, non-degree awards, some college, no degree, that's only another 10%.
No kidding.
And then high school diplomas, 35.7%.
Yeah.
No formal education requirement, 23.7%.
That is intriguing.
So it's really, there's a huge range. And obviously we've got some things like one of the things you find though, of course, is that like the wages, when we always kind of go back to the wages, the median wages are, the difference is like, those doctoral professional degrees where it's 2.7% of the distribution, 126,000, a little over 126,000 a year for them. If you're looking at no formal educational credential required, $35,660.
That is a big change. Okay.
So like there's things, and like the bachelor's degree people are at about 92,000 a year. And of course that, this is median, and we understand that like you've got people who are bachelor's degree people who are making $200,000-$300,000 a year, and you have, some of the
making
40,000
educators making 40 with a bachelor's. Yes.
Yeah. I didn't want to call out a particular occupation.
No, I will. You don't have to.
But yeah, so like those things are going on, and the other area where there seems to be some differences, like those bachelor's degree, the expected, when you kind of sum those with the typical requirement, bachelor's degree are expected to have about 5.6% growth over the coming that projection period. Master's degree, 10.2%.
Oh, wow.
Professional degrees, 5.6%. Now you get down to associate's degree are like 4.5%. Post-secondary non-degree award, 5.1%. But then you look at like the high school diplomas and then no requirements, 1.7, 1.6. So much slower.
Yeah.
But once again, this is
That's
across
a large population too.
It's and you're 35% of your people are high school diplomas. And so like there's a huge range of occupations. So like individual occupations, obviously within those are going to be doing much better. And as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of growth for HVAC as compared to even other similar, maintenance occupations, installation maintenance, repair occupations. So like, sometimes don't get thrown off
right
by that, because when you're talking HVAC, there may not be a school. They might put you in that post-secondary non-degree award, but we're going to say that it's a high school diploma, but we recognize that there's some sort of apprenticeship,
attached
long-term on-the-job training, which is the same. In some respects, it's moving up the ladder, because you're doing it's multi-discipline cross-training in your in HVAC. You're getting low voltage electricity, you're getting high voltage electricity, you're getting gas and safety things. You're so like all the some hydraulic stuff. So like all these different things that are part of that scope are things you're being trained on, which moves your value up, and the expected earnings helps it up, because you're doing more and you're learning more, and you have lots of transferability on the information.
A lot of opportunity, a lot of potential for growth within the HVAC industry, and that's really what we wanted to show and help people understand. But I love data. I love analytics. We could do this for hours, and I would still have a fun time doing it. But I know our audience is, limited to a certain amount of time.
Oh my God.
So let's make sure though that that we walk away understanding where can we get more resources. Where does all this data come from, so that our audience can go dive deeper for themselves?
So I think a great starting point is, of course, the Occupational Outlook Handbook. That's 90. Let's see, that's like BLS. Oh, I've got so many pages open. And it's bls.gov is the main part of it. And then I just want to make sure I'm giving the correct thing. So, I was correct. bls.gov/OOH/. So the Occupational Outlook Handbook, OOH, that's a great starting point. If you change that OOH to an EMP, that's EM, first three letters of employment, that's going to take you to the employment projections group.
Nice.
And that's where you've got access to all our data tables and things like that. And obviously, if it gets to be in-depth stuff and they have other questions, there's a email form that you can fill out, and we will get back to you. There are numbers, and you talk to one of my coworkers, or depending on how technical the question is, you'll be talking to me.
Nice.
But yeah, so like bls.OOH.gov/OOH is the main place to go, because that gives you access to all the occupational information we have, and that some of the starting information, because that has things like when you go in, each profile that we have on there has several different tabs. There's a summary tab, which kind of goes through the typical pay and outlook information. And then there's the what they do, which talks a little bit about some of the things that each occupation does. There's a work environment that talks a little bit about where people work, injury, illnesses, work schedules, things like that. How to become one, which talks about the education and training, certifications, licensure, some important qualities. There's a pay tab, and then there's a job outlook tab that kind of talks about those what's going on with the total employment, the change, as well as some of the factors that are there that are driving growth and change. And of course, in this case, it's absolute growth. There are occupations where we talk about declines, but not this one.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, William Lawhorn and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We really appreciate you joining us and diving deeper into the state of HVACR.
Yeah. So, if down the road, if you have any more questions, we can talk again about some more specific topics. We were really general and broad on this one, and I think we overwhelmed ourselves with our scope on this one.
That's all right. We got a good overview, and I'm with you. So let us know as you're listening to this podcast, what components were you most intrigued with, and maybe we can dive deeper on another episode.
And keep an eye out. Tail end of 2026, we'll have new projections for the 25 to 35 projections period.
Awesome.
Projections come out annually from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and things change, although factors continue on. But
awesome.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thank you so much. And we will see you all on the next episode of Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC podcast. Bye, everybody.